There is a particular kind of violence to being seen, not the casual glance of strangers, not the familiar recognition of friends, but the consuming, devotional gaze of those who have decided, without quite knowing why, that you are not merely a person, but a presence. That you are not flesh and blood, but something projected onto a screen in the dark theater of their minds. This is the violence that creates a star, and like all forms of power, it is neither given nor discovered. It is engineered. Consider the woman standing in a line of hundreds outside a Berlin casting office in 1922. The air is thick with desperation. Around her, young actresses expose themselves, perform hysterics, claw for attention with the frantic energy of drowning swimmers. And she stands there, simply dressed, holding a puppy on a leash, an elegant necklace draped around the animal's neck. She smokes. Her gestures are slow, suggestive, deliberate. Her eyes hold a hint of coldness, a glacial remove that says, "I am not here to beg for your attention. I am here to receive it." The casting director never had a chance. Her name was Marlene Dietrich, and she understood something that afternoon that most people spend their entire lives failing to grasp. The human eye is drawn not to noise, but to mystery, not to need, but to self-containment. We are exhausted by the world's desperation. We are seduced by its confidence. 7 years later, when the director Joseph von Sternberg watched Dietrich perform on a Berlin stage, he experienced the same paralysis that had gripped the casting director. She stared at him directly, insolently, like a man. She leaned against a wall with a provocation so subtle it seemed accidental. Von Sternberg had come to cast a male actor. He forgot the man entirely. He had found his Lola Lola, not because Dietrich was the most talented actress in Berlin, but because she radiated something far more valuable than talent. She radiated possibility. What von Sternberg did next was not direction, it was alchemy. He drew a silver line down her nose to thin it. He taught her to look at the camera not as a lens, but as a lover she intended to destroy. He built a lighting system that followed her like a devoted shadow, heightened by gauze and smoke, transforming her into something that existed halfway between a woman and a weather pattern. Cool, bright, untouchable. And here we arrive at the first terrible truth of the star. You must learn to see yourself as an object, not in the debased sense of commodification, but in the sacred sense of the fetish. The fetish commands emotion precisely because it is not alive. It does not argue back. It does not have moods that tire us. It stands in its perfection and allows us to breathe into it whatever fantasies we choose. Dietrich could study her own face in the mirror as if it belonged to someone else. She could arrange her body like a sculptor arranging marble. This self-distance, this ability to step outside yourself and perceive your own image as a painter perceives a canvas, is the fundamental requirement of the star. Without it, you are merely a person. With it, you become a screen upon which the world projects its deepest desires. A dying count once asked to see her legs in person. She visited his hospital room, lifted her skirt, and watched him sigh with a satisfaction that bordered on religious ecstasy. "Thank you," he whispered. "Now I can die happy." This is the power of the fetishistic object. It does not love you back. It does not need to. Its perfection is sufficient. The myth made flesh. But there is a higher order of stardom than the fetishistic. There is the mythic. On July 2nd, 1960, Harry Truman, former President of the United States, architect of victory in war, embodiment of the old order, publicly declared that John F. Kennedy was too young, too inexperienced, too green for the presidency. It was a killing blow, delivered by an elder statesman with the weight of history behind him. Any ordinary politician would have issued a statement, would have negotiated behind closed doors, would have apologized, explained, compromised. Kennedy did something else entirely. He called a press conference, live, nationwide, televised, but he added a theatrical flourish. He was away on vacation. No one saw him. No one heard from him. The silence grew thick with anticipation, and then, at the appointed hour, he strode into the room like a sheriff entering a corrupt frontier town, hatless, coatless, his voice rising with controlled fury. This is a young country, founded by young men, and still young in heart. The world is changing. The old ways will not do. He was not debating Truman. He was framing him. Truman was no longer an elder statesman offering counsel. He was the corrupt rancher in a Western. the authoritarian father in a teenage rebellion film. Kennedy was Alan Ladd in Shane. He was James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. He had not studied political science that summer, he had studied Hollywood. And this is the second terrible truth. In an age of images, power does not belong to the competent. It belongs to the mythic. Months later, Kennedy faced Richard Nixon in the first nationally televised presidential debate. Nixon knew his statistics. Nixon understood policy. Nixon had served as vice president and could quote accomplishments with the precision of an accountant. But beneath the camera lights, his 5 o'clock shadow showed through his makeup like a stain of anxiety. Sweat streaked his brow. His eyes shifted and blinked with the desperation of a man who knows he is being judged not by his mind, but by his presence. Kennedy, meanwhile, looked past Nixon. He looked into the camera. He spoke not of tax codes and infrastructure bills, but of freedom, of new frontiers, of America's pioneer spirit reborn. He was not running for office. He was starring in a film, and every voter was invited to see themselves as the co-protagonist in his epic. The polls soared. Young girls screamed and wept at his appearances as if he were not a politician but a rock star, a demigod descended from Mount Olympus. And in a sense, he was. His father had produced films. He had spent his youth in Hollywood, studying Gary Cooper's silence, Montgomery Clift's wounded intensity, Cary Grant's aristocratic ease. He understood that the great stars did not play characters, they embodied archetypes. John Wayne was not an actor, he was the father. Marilyn Monroe was not an actress, she was the siren. And Kennedy was the young king, the doomed prince of Camelot, calling a tired nation back to its own forgotten mythology. After his assassination, his widow Jackie would reveal that he played the soundtrack to Camelot before bed. "Don't let it be forgot," the lyrics sang, "that once there was a spot, for one brief shining moment, that was known as Camelot." She knew, even then, what he had built. Not a presidency, a myth. And myths do not die when the man dies. They simply grow larger in the telling. The dream logic. To understand why the star haunts us, you must understand the nature of dreams. In dreams, the real and the unreal fuse. You walk through your childhood home, but the walls are made of water. You speak to a dead parent, and their voice is both familiar and strange. This fusion, what Freud called the uncanny, the simultaneously strange and familiar, is what makes dreams obsess us. If they were entirely real, they would bore us. If they were entirely unreal, we would feel nothing. Their power lies in the borderland. The star occupies this same borderland. When you encounter a true star, whether on a silver screen, a television monitor, or across a crowded room at a party, you experience a version of the uncanny. Their gestures are real enough. They eat, they speak, they bleed, but their aloofness, their self-containment, their almost surreal quality makes them seem like figures from a dream. You cannot possess them because they are not fully present. You cannot forget them because they are not fully absent. They become lodged in your unconscious like a splinter of glass, and slowly, inevitably, you begin to imitate them without knowing why. The psychologist Sandor Ferenczi called this introjection, the process by which another person becomes part of your own ego. You internalize their character. You wear your hair like theirs. You adopt their vocal inflections. You find yourself wondering, in moments of crisis, what they would do. The star colonizes your imagination not through argument, but through image. They bypass your conscious defenses entirely and speak directly to the part of your mind that still believes in gods. Consider the Count Saint-Germain, that 18th century phantom who drifted through the courts of Europe like a rumor made flesh. No one knew his age, no one knew his origin. He spoke in a dozen languages but belonged to no country. He went out only at night, dressed in black, adorned with jewels of impossible brilliance. He ate in front of kings but was never seen to swallow. He painted colors so vibrant that his jewels seemed real and his reality seemed painted. When he died, or seemed to die, no one believed it. A century later, people were still certain he was hiding somewhere, immortal, watching. Or consider Andy Warhol in the 20th century. The silver wig, the blank face, the pure surface behind which there was, by his own admission, nothing at all. "If you want to know all about Andy Warhol," he said, "just look at the surface of my paintings and films and me, and there I am. There's nothing behind it, and yet people obsessed over him. They projected genius, emptiness, profundity, nihilism onto that blank screen of a face. He was the perfect mirror. He reflected back whatever the viewer needed to see. This is the secret that the passage whispers and shouts. Become a cipher. Become a mix of the real and the unreal. Most people are hopelessly, exhaustingly real. They wear their emotions on their faces. They explain themselves constantly. They are banal in their transparency. The star, by contrast, etherealizes. Their words seem to come from the unconscious, loose, ambiguous, open to interpretation. They hold themselves back. They occasionally reveal a trait, a spiritual interest, a private hobby, a fleeting vulnerability that makes people wonder whether they truly know them at all. The face is your instrument. Tune it. Cultivate blankness. Let people read into your eyes whatever they most need to find there. Garbo did this. Dietrich did this. Kennedy studied James Dean's ironic smile until he could deploy it like a weapon. The close-up in cinema reveals not the character, but the actor's own mystery. You must learn to be a close-up in real life, to fill the mind of your target so completely that they see you even when you are not there. The danger of light. But here is the final, most terrible truth. Stars burn because they are consumed. The danger is not scandal. The public is remarkably forgiving of its idols. Kennedy's affairs emerged, his addictions to risk, his human frailties laid bare, and his myth only grew. Errol Flynn's rakish image was enhanced by his scandals, not diminished. Once people have recognized a star, even bad publicity feeds the obsession. It reminds them that you are large enough to survive the storm. No, the true danger is boredom. Boredom is the only real death for the star. If your image becomes predictable, if the public grows too familiar with your face, if they can finish your sentences and anticipate your gestures, you are finished. You cannot haunt people's dreams if they never see you, but you cannot let them see so much that the mystery evaporates. You must be ubiquitous and untouchable, visible and unknowable, everywhere and nowhere. The attention itself becomes a kind of slow poison. Marilyn Monroe was destroyed not by scandal, but by the endless, consuming gaze of millions who loved not her, but their own projection of her. The solution is the one Dietrich discovered. Maintain a distance even from your own idolatry. Approach your image playfully, as a game, as a costume you can put on and take off. Never become obsessed with the obsession of others. Take their adulation with a grain of salt, and keep something, some small private chamber of yourself that belongs to no one. Remember, everyone is performing. The only question is whether you are the actor or the audience. The star chooses to be the actor, always, in every room, in every mirror, in every silent moment. They mold their presence as if seeing themselves from outside. They renew their luster or face the worst fate imaginable. Not hatred, not scandal, but oblivion. And so, if you would walk this path, understand what you are becoming. You are not merely seeking attention. You are constructing an idol, a piece of stone carved into the shape of a god, perhaps glittering with gold and jewels. The worshippers will fill you with life. They will imagine you have real powers. They will see in your shape whatever god they most need to believe in. But you will know the truth. You are the stone. The god lives only in their imagination. And that is the most seductive power of all.